Hello and welcome to Talking Bottom. I'm Angela Pearson.
I'm Matt Brooks.
And I'm Paul Tanter.
While we're researching for the Talking Bottom book, we're currently doing a series of themed episodes to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Bottom first airing. This week we're looking at base needs.
What does that mean, that term, like needing a base?
Well, base means low, essentially. But base is also obviously your basic needs. So before we go into the term base humour, which is also something that Bottom is built around, I thought I might tell you what the 7 basic human needs are. Do you guys know?
I've heard of a pyramid of basic needs. Is it the same thing? Yeah?
Yeah. Is this the Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
That is exactly it. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he was a Russian-American psychologist. He wrote them in 1943. And they have been criticised since and things have been added. But these are the 7 basic physiological needs. And that is air, water, food, sex, sleep, clothing and shelter. They're your basic human needs that you need to survive.
It goes from air to sex. It's quite the
Well,
leap.
so it's since been criticised because people have said you don't need sex to survive.
Right.
And the idea of the hierarchy of needs is that you move upwards through the pyramid. You've got social belonging, you've got esteem needs, you've got cognitive needs, you've got aesthetic needs. And it goes on to sort of transcendence and self-actualization. So they're your spiritual needs.
How many are there now? Much more than 7.
So the basic ones are your 7. But then there are needs that like achieve what you can as a human being.
I mean, I'm assuming at some point they have to add Wi-Fi to this 7, sure.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Starbucks. Well, no, not Starbucks. It's shit. Coffee. Yeah. So, but the basic human needs are, I would argue, obviously your food and your water, and the ability to sleep, and then I think your shelter,
part of.
Otherwise, you're not going to survive. So it's about your human survival. But of course, some people would argue that sex is a basic human need, and that was what.
So a form of acceptance, and it gets equated to love. Obviously, a lot of the time, making love.
Is it because you, without sex, you eventually suffer psychological harm, something like that?
That's it. Well, we all need to feel like we belong and we're loved, and sex and reproduction.
Yes, so that's the main thing.
Is to fulfill your human purpose.
Yeah, society would stop if everyone stopped having sex, unless we start breeding in labs or whatever. Yeah, which might happen. Welcome to Talking Bottom.
So that's your basic human needs, and obviously when you look through that, you kind of think, well, yeah, you know, Richie and Eddie are also scrabbling around for food a lot of the time, aren't they? But they have got their shelter, but that's why Eddie's living with Richie.
Yeah.
You know, that it kind of works as to why they need each other, isn't it? Those things, but they can't give each other sex, and that's why they're so obsessed with it. So with Bottom, obviously, the opening episode that they had with Smells, it opens to the fact they've been out trying to get women. Like their entire reason for being, as you're introduced to them, is to be getting out there, getting women. They're hopeless with women. They can't pull. And then as time goes on, you realise Richie's a virgin.
Smells is probably the ultimate episode in terms of it's just purely about the pursuit of sex for both of them, isn't it?
For both of them, yeah. Because in Digger, it's mainly around Richie. Yeah. But then they both go to the Love Bureau.
That's true, but
I feel Eddie's been dragged along reluctantly.
But we've said before that Eddie doesn't seem as bothered as Richie about getting his end away because, I mean, it changes, doesn't it? We've said later on it's that he's a virgin as well, and that's actually not quite right with Eddie, is it? Because he has had it off with
Ethel
Cardew, you know, and he's, you know, what was it, Nasty Linda, and all of that. So Eddie's quite happy as long as his other needs are met, isn't it? Which is booze and food, and sleep.
Booze, food, and I mean, sleep is in there as well. But I would say if you asked most Bottom fans, what do you think are the main base needs of Bottom that Richie and Eddie are always pursuing? They would say sex, alcohol, and food.
Yeah, like they're described. Well? They're described as 2 losers who are trying to get women, though, aren't they? Yeah. That is how you sum them up.
Now, I agree about money, but the thing with money is people want to get money so they can then either
one step
have
removed.
Sex, food, or booze.
Sure, like to have a load of dusky young maidens on a beach with a slap-up grill for 2 and stuff. That's meeting all their needs.
Yeah, and Eddie has a perversion. I mean, they both got perversions, but I feel like Eddie's perversion is mentioned in Contest, obviously, like that, what is it, Sharon Stone painted green with a copy of the Racing Post sticking out of their bum.
So
that
surreal.
Sums up Eddie. He wants a woman, you know, I mean, I don't know about the painted green, but, you know, basically naked.
Vacuum packed
is serial killer level.
Yeah. And then, but like, you can also read through what horse he's going to bet on as well. So it sums up what Eddie wants out of life.
It makes me think of George Costanza when he wanted to introduce food as part of his sex play, like and just have a sandwich on the go. Like, yeah, George Costanza is one of the characters that's always moaning about being unlucky in love and not being able to get women, and he gets like 80 women over the course of the series. It's ludicrous. It doesn't really tie up that he doesn't do badly with women at all massively out of his league. You don't never see Eddie or Richie with a girl, really.
You know what? That's true. It's with George Costanza, they have him dating lots of women, so you can see him fuck it up with lots of women and see how he does badly. With Richie and Eddie, they never go down the road of, only with Lady Natasha, that's the one instance where they do this, but generally they don't have like Richie or Eddie meets a woman, tries to date her, and it goes wrong with hilarious consequences.
Absolutely, it's not a date, that is it? That's not. That's a kind of arranged marriage sort of.
Well, they're only getting successful with Lady Natasha because they've lied about their status, and she's on the make. But she would never have come back to their flat if they'd met her in the pub. And Richie had actually been able to introduce himself to her properly. It's because it's via the Love Bureau that she is anywhere near that flat.
Well, it's a rhetorical question I'm asking here, but how many sitcoms characters get women through lying? Right? That's very common. It's not a strictly bottom thing.
No, it's a definite trope, isn't it, in the sitcom? In any kind of like men chatting up women in any kind of scenario, it's kind of what is it that Jeremy says in Peep Show? Like, just say that you love them.
Yeah,
like that's within his
first date.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you said that how many characters in sitcoms get women through lying, and they do. They get the women. Richie and Eddie lie, but they don't even get the women. Their schemes don't pay off with the sex that other characters like George Costanza and people would actually, Joey Tribbiani would actually get.
Yeah.
Instead, they're just left at home with each other, to pull each other off.
Yeah. And like in say Steptoe, like Harold will get a woman back to the house, but then Albert will ruin it for him.
Yeah.
There was one that I watched recently in the later series where he's bought a waterbed. He's brought the woman home and the bed bugs are in the bed and she runs out screaming. And then it's like, I'm getting a proper bed. I'm not having another one off the cart. And so he gets this water. It's so very 70s.
Yeah.
And then of course Albert says, I'll get it all ready for you. Whatever. He's going to like repair something, and then he ends up stabbing a knife through the bed.
Why did you get your dad to prepare your waterbed? What are you doing?
No, it's not. He's doing something else in the room. He's like fixing his shoe for him or something. And anyways, gets a knife out, and obviously you know exactly what's going to happen. But like they get back and he hasn't told him, and it's like waterlogged.
Chekhov's gun, isn't it? I've got a waterbed. Wonder if that's going to get punched.
But Harold is successful with women, but then it gets ruined. So it's not even as if in Bottom where you've got Richie and Eddie getting a bird back really, and then it is all ruined by like say Eddie, like because Richie ruins it for himself. Although it does transpire that the operation was obviously a backstreet thing that, like we were saying last week about how operations and things are all medieval, that idea of like he's hooked his kidneys and his heart back to front.
His whole system, meaning his whole digestive system, I guess, backfired. Well, that is a miracle you're still alive. So just needed some heart defibrillation and he's fine.
So Bottom resists the temptation to have the usual hilarious consequences of them getting on a date and then things going wrong. It has less episodes than I thought it would do when I was preparing for this episode, where sex is the ultimate driving factor in the entire plot.
No, they have Richie bemoaning the fact that he's not ever had sex, don't they? A fair bit.
Consistently.
Yeah, or Eddie teasing him about the fact that he'll never get a woman. Like that happens. But like, as you say, the main plot driver isn't always back. But then weirdly the opening episode is, so they obviously decided that was how they wanted to release Eddie and Richie on the world.
I went through the episodes and tried to sort of apportion them into lists of what were the driving factors in through the plot.
The want,
Yeah, so the most common, I would say, form of plot was one that I summed up as they're passing the time and then they react to events that they've caused. And that would be gas, culture, apocalypse, sup, burglary, holy, sout, hole, break and carnival. Then you have other ones that break down into... There's one that is just simply they're getting revenge on someone and they want to drink as much as possible, which is finger. Dough is get money to get booze and birds. Terror, get money and then raise the devil to have sex. So sex is a driving factor in that one. Accident, Richie thinks that a party will get him laid. So there is kind of a sex thing there. Parade, seeking money and booze. And then Digger and Smells, as you said, where sex is sort of the driving thing. Contest is simply passing the time and then having a wank.
Yeah.
I have to say, virginity is a huge, huge theme with through Bottom. Through Rick Mao, I genuinely, when I hear the word virgin, I think of two people. Rick Mail and
Wait,
Richard
Rick-
Branson, both Richards.
Sorry,
Do you think of Rick Mail though, or do you think of Rick from the Young Ones?
I think of Rick. Well, no, not Rick from the Young Ones, because he's ha ha ha. Rick is still a virgin. I'm not a virgin. And that's the only time there's mentioned that he's a virgin. Where it comes, Richie is
So
brought up as being a virgin a lot more.
So you meant to say Richard.
What did I say?
You said Rick Mail. So
Well, I do think I think of Rick Mail as like the personification of all his
of a
characters.
virgin.
I
I
thought
know he's
Rick
not.
Mail
I know
was
he's
one of
not.
the
Yeah,
most-
it's obviously it's basically I'm thinking of Richie, but I
Yeah.
think of Rick Mail.
I
In
genuinely
terms of his
thought.
characters, yeah.
I genuinely thought you were going to say, based on the fact that you started with Rick Mail and then you gave a dramatic pause, I thought you were going to say Rick Mail and Rick Mail, meaning as in Rick from the Young Ones and Richie from Bottom or
I
something.
see.
No, you're right. Like Richie is, I mean, he's a virgin from the very beginning, isn't he? And it's something that he's always.
Most people are
Most people are a virgin from the beginning of their sitcoms.
from their life.
But yeah, the
you're born
point
a
being
virgin
that
and you die a virgin.
Richie's never ever got anywhere near a woman. Let alone,
Grab
like, has
hold
he
of
not even
this.
kissed anyone? It transpires, does it really? So
Yes.
you've always wanted to know what kissing's
Kissing's
like.
like, grab hold of this. It's the banister, the the plan of him just getting touched by a woman.
Yeah.
That's enough for him.
But the drive, just to go back to the episodes going through what is their driving forces and the basic kind of human needs and that, like, it's either sex or it's money or it's food or it's something that will lead to them being more comfortable in their existence, isn't it?
Yeah.
And one thing that I just, in my kind of very basic research, I'm in no way a psychologist, but as you move up through these social achievements in life, I think the way I understand it is if you've got your 7 basic needs, only then can you progress in life to achieving your actual purpose. And it's that idea that if you aren't safe and if you aren't secure and you haven't got enough food and shelter, you can't then pursue what you're meant to in life. And I think that sums up Richie and Eddie, doesn't it? Because they're never ever getting beyond those basic needs being met. They can't move up towards, like, well, they're going to get a purpose and get a job. And they're not going to actually fulfill their relationships. They're never going to reproduce. They're never going to be spiritual and, you know, be well-rounded human beings because they're trapped in that immature level.
Good point.
So
that is what sort of sums them up, isn't it?
So whereas you've got something like Friends or Men Behaving Badly, where you've got people in jobs and they've got money and it's not really an issue, and their pursuit is about enriching their lives and fulfillment and getting a promotion or having a kid or something like that.
Yeah.
For Richie and Eddie, it's the bare necessities, it's the basics of life.
That's why Maslow's hierarchy of needs was criticised for including sex in the basic, because, of course, you don't need sex to achieve everything you need to in life. If, say, you are spiritual, you know, there are people who decide they never want to marry or have children or any of those things, and they still feel, you know, they fulfill their lives in a completely different way. You know, it's not that you need sex to survive.
But Richie, that's his ultimate goal is to have sex.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly.
And you feel like the character would kind of have like peaked, run out of things to do if he'd had sex, almost. Like, obviously they'd find more stuff to go on with it if they chose to go that way, but it's like the cartoon element of always being in the same situation. He would always be a virgin.
Is it to do with their appetites as well, in that these are things that are the basics of life? Eddie and Richie want food, drink and sex, but they don't just want enough to survive, they want to be gluttonous with it and have as much as possible.
Yeah, and that's where the depraved and the perverse and everything comes in, because they've been kind of starved a bit. So I suppose they're going to the most extreme of what their dreams of getting it is as well. Like the idea of having sex for Richie, it wouldn't be anything.
Can you imagine
It couldn't.
sex?
It
Oh my
couldn't
God.
be anything as good as what he's imagining it to be for him, would it? I mean, obviously, like within, like I think it is. Is it in the first episode where he's teased for having a microscopic penis? That's in Accident, isn't it? When Aid does the impression of him with the mop on the head.
Oh, that.
Like, I'm a virgin with a microscopic penis.
Well, is it the first episode where Eddie is looking at his knob in the toilet through his glasses?
No, that's,
You'll be lucky enough to get 10p a go. You mean that one?
What fucking episode
that's
is
in
that?
that's in that's in Parade.
It's Parade. Yes, you're right. It's Parade. Yeah.
It's all planted that Richie's got a tiny penis from series 1, basically. But I don't think it is mentioned in Smells, is it?
Maybe not. Do you think, and I'm sure you both agree, that if Richie did have sex, he would last 2 seconds?
Oh, yeah, if that.
I agree. I think he'd last 2 seconds. I've often wondered if he would have a sort of Kevin the Teenager type conversion, where, do you ever remember that Harry
Yes.
sketch? Yeah. Eventually, Kevin the Teenager has sex with Nicholas Stapleton from EastEnders in my friend's house, because that's where they filmed that party.
Really?
And then the next day he comes downstairs, he's like,
Hello,
"Hey,
mother."
Mum and Dad," and his hair's combed at the side.
Sure.
Hey, I thought I'd go and get some milk or something.
Yeah. Well, that is actually revealed to be a dream sequence. So that's
Yeah.
what. So, but yeah, that wasn't written as a dream sequence.
Yeah.
They just realised, oh, we can't do any more Kevin episodes unless we
But
undo
that
that.
idea of coming of age, pardon the pun, but that idea of coming of age and being an adult, like it's all part of having lost your
Becoming a man.
virginity, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Well,
For women as well, though, I think.
So is
but
it a real-
particularly for a bloke, I think.
So that's something I want to get into. How much does this tie into like, toxic masculinity and things of being a base needs, craving, horny teenager? You know, like American Pie, everyone like, oh,
Well,
you
I
just
want-
want to get our virginity
We've-
lost.
I wanted to talk a little bit about base humour. Have you heard of the term sophomoric humour?
no, I don't think so.
So that is essentially toilet humour and filth and adolescent humour. So sophomore, you'll have heard of, which
Yeah.
is what they call second year students in America, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've gone through freshman year, you're in your sophomore year. Sophomoric humour is that which is juvenile and puerile. It's a type of comedy that includes toilet humour and gags that are based on an appeal to the silly sense of immaturity. The word sophomoric is an adjective that refers to someone or something that is conceited, overconfident, poorly informed, immature, and is therefore stereotypically sophomore. The phrase can be derisive, but it's also used to refer to a style or vein of comedic act. So,
does that sum up bottom or
but
Yeah.
is that Richie or what? Like
It
that
totally
idea,
is.
and the actual phrase sophomore, it comes from the Greek. So sophomoric means that you have a delusion of superior intelligence.
Oh,
So
like
It's
the-
Richie through and through. So it's basically it's the Greek, which means wise man, but it's mixed with, I think it's morisis or something, which is moron.
So,
So it's a wise fool, but that's the idea. It's like an oxymoron.
So is the idea, is it applied to this because of the use of the word sophomore meaning second year of university? The idea being that someone's gone to university, they've studied for 1 year, and now they think they know everything.
You're a learned fool if you're
Right.
a sophomore. So it's a mixture of the wisdom of Sophitis, which is a Greek word as well, obviously, which is obviously wise, but then moros, which means foolish or moron. So sophomore means that you think you know everything, but you know nothing. And that, again, sums up Richie.
You know that term?
The Kruger effect,
The
no?
Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the thing of like when you are brand new at something, you have
Mm.
all this enthusiasm, you think you know a lot, and then when you know more about the subject, you realise how much you don't know.
Yeah. But isn't that just Richie through and through?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he is a learned fool, isn't he? And that he'll talk and talk and talk about something, but he actually knows nothing about it.
I'll challenge you on this one specific thing of it. Oh, fuck.
Now- well,
Yeah.
which does kind of apply to, well, it apply. You know, we talked about people coming of age and at college and stuff like that, and we've said before how Richie and Eddie are essentially children or teenagers, but in adult bodies, and that does kind of tie in with the base needs they have, because all teenagers are horny as fuck and
Yep.
just want to drink and eat.
Yeah, and they're immature, but they think they know it all as well, don't they? Like
Yeah,
there's that like
overconfident
feeling,
bravado.
feeling that you know everything when you're a teenager. That comes from, I suppose, because you are at school and you just feel like you know everything, and you're nowhere near knowing anything of the world yet. But you want to, and you think that just through reading about it, you know. So like Richie's read The Joy of Sex, and you know he thinks he knows what's going to happen, doesn't he? But he's got no idea.
So how does the theme of being a desperate virgin trying to get your end away translate to female fans watching Bottom? Because I would speak completely metaphorically, but I would feel a lot of teenage boys, not me, would very much empathise with wanting to get your end away. How does that translate with being a female fan?
Well, I mean,
Ange,
what,
if you could
Yeah.
just speak for all women now, please.
I can definitely try and speak for, most Bottom fans who are female, but I would say women recognise that in themselves as well. Like, it's not like girls. I think that's one of the biggest issues in society, is that people are meant to believe that men want to have sex and women are trying to withhold it, I think that idea that growing up and finding someone and wanting to be with them in every way, like that is something that girls identify with as well, wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of girls talk about losing their virginity as well, and they're kind of seen like often,
But
they would lose them earlier.
the
than
key
guys.
thing is that the judgment comes from, for a guy, if you haven't had sex and you're
Yeah.
a virgin, that's seen as something to deride. It's seen as something
a dirty
that you're not
word, isn't it?
manly, you're a virgin, you're pathetic.
Yeah.
You know, whereas with a woman, if you're a virgin still, then you're pure and you're innocent, and you should be applauded for still being a virgin and withholding the most special thing that you have as a woman.
And
it's so strange, isn't it?
And having a high number of sexual partners for men is seen as desirable, for women is seen as bad. I heard someone say that if you hear whatever number someone tells you their number of sexual partners is, if it's a man, divide it by 3. If it's a woman, times it by 3, and then you've probably got the true one.
Sure. Have you seen what they do in the shadows?
I've not really...
Mockumentary about vampires.
Yeah.
And
I've
they
wanted
bring
to
up-
watch it. Yeah.
There's a fantastic line in that saying, "So why do you only drink virgin blood?" So we don't only drink virgin blood, but we prefer it. It's like, how to explain it? Like if you was to have a ham sandwich, you would just prefer to eat it if someone hadn't fucked it.
Nice.
And with that, I think it's time for a word from our sponsor.
Do you ever get stuck for things to read? Do you like Bottom? Well, why don't you put the two needs together and fulfill your base needs and read all about Bottom in the new book, Talking Bottom, a guide to this cult sitcom. It's available on Unbound, which is a crowdfunding website. Does that mean that the book's not completely funded? It fucking doesn't. It got funded in 1 week. That's how great it's gonna be. It's not yet written.
But yeah, I suppose like there is a masculine element to Bottom that people have said, you know, previously, and it's there undeniably that, you know, like Richie and Eddie are very, very male characters. They're very desperate. And I think what appeals to me is just the absolute humour of their situation. And I've always just found Bottom really, really hysterically funny. Whereas I think I might have said in the past that a few guys that I've spoken to about Bottom have said, "Oh, it's depressing."
It was too much
it's
like
too
their own
close
life.
to how my future might be, and I can't
God.
watch it, or I don't know. And people have said that about Steptoe and Son, though. Yeah, it's too depressing. It's too kind of dark and kind of like it's at that like horrible level of like maybe I'll never achieve in the way that they on the bottom of the heap. But I've never reacted to Bottom in that way, so I can't understand it. But can you guys, like, obviously you say you empathise with Richie.
You know what? When
Did you ever worry that, oh my God, I might end up being like them?
A virgin forever. Yeah, I think so. When I was in my early 40s, I still thought maybe it won't happen.
When I was a teenager, when I was watching it in the 90s, I definitely did empathise with the whole, why haven't I got a girlfriend? I look great with a girlfriend. Everyone else seems to have a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Why don't I?
Just
did you
having
have
a girlfriend doesn't not I want to go out with Mrs. Such and Such. It's a girlfriend. A blank slate. Just I need. It's a status symbol. Someone to fit in under my arm.
But did you have that feeling of like, so Richie, to quote Richie, why won't anyone have any sex with me? Like, or did you have the feeling that, you know, it was your fault?
I think when you're growing up, you have a feeling that if other people of your age do have partners or in relationships or whatever, and you don't, then there must be something that the opposite sex doesn't like about you if you're into the opposite sex.
And is it their fault or your fault?
I feel, I think...
Because this is where we're straying into the territory
the
now,
incel
which is
thing,
that
isn't it?
incels obviously don't necessarily blame themselves, do they?
Yeah.
They feel poor me.
No,
Pour me another drink. No,
yeah.
they feel like downtrodden, and it's the women that are to blame, and other men who are more manly or you know, whatever.
Women
prowess.
only like arseholes. They don't like nice guys like me with my lovely hat and neckbeard.
Which is, I think we've said before, like, you know, Richie would be an incel now, but do you think he would, like, was he? I don't think he was a woman hater, but if he got on these internet forums,
I think
exchanged views with people.
There's certainly some stuff there, like we talked about the chambermaid a few times, where it just when he has a little bit of power, he turns so nasty.
I think Richie's too optimistic. I think he maintains too much optimism to ever go down that dark path and just give up on the idea. Because incels, it seems like they've just given up on the idea that women will ever like them, so they go down this path of hating them and I want them to die. Richie would always think, no, next week it'll be better.
He's hopeful.
Maybe, he does. He does love women in his own sort of way. Well, loves the image of them. He objectifies them. It doesn't. Can you think of a woman character, female character within the Bottom universe that would actually be a good fit for Richie? Genuinely, someone. So I guess a little bit pervy, a little bit racist.
Brenda the ball gazer seemed to have a twinkle in her eye, didn't she, when he was chatting to her?
Yeah, I mean, like 50 years ago, she would have been still too old for him. Yeah.
No, I don't really think there is there? I mean, Lily Lineker looks kind of just taken aback when he says, you know, you're a bit rough around the edges, but you'll do, doesn't she? But she doesn't look. She doesn't look appalled.
Yeah, I think the character's caricatured up to a level that is completely undesirable, and you couldn't bear to be around him. That's his whole thing. Yeah. So probably not by definition of who he is.
Interesting how Rick sold Richie being so pathetic, isn't it? Because Rick is such, like, you look at Flash Heart, you look at Rick in real life, like, he's just so charismatic. And it's weird that optimism that comes through with Richie, I think, is in Rick's performance, isn't it? Like, you don't ever really feel like Richie is that pathetic, just because you know that there's that confidence underlying there. But then that's the brilliant thing about Rick Mayall's performance. He can turn it on its head, and you see the vulnerability in Richie. It's
amazing how someone as good looking as Rick Mayall, when you look at him as Flash Heart and you think, fucking hell, that's a good looking man. He's still got the same face,
a rubber face.
Yeah, but he's able to somehow make himself we still like Richie, but he's able to make himself this pathetic character that women find revolting and that is just generally a loser.
Yeah, Ruby Wax has an interview with him, and she says something about the fact that he plays very ugly characters despite being such a lovely, good-looking man.
Yeah, well, I think Rick said he always liked to play the loser, people who were crap at things.
Yeah. Because it's more kind of fun, I suppose, to get your teeth into that, especially as a comedy character. Like, you have to be flawed, don't you?
Flash Heart. So what's Flash Heart's flaw? I guess he's over bravado and stuff, but he's doing well, isn't he? He's succeeding.
I mean, Rick didn't write him, though, did he? Like, that's obviously Blackadder, that's Richard Curtis and Ben Elton, and that is the complete opposite, isn't it? That bravado and everything. Like, but he's very two-dimensional, Flash Heart, isn't he?
It sort of works. It's amazing that Flash Heart works in a full episode in Blackadder Goes Forth, when his first appearance is, 5 minutes, if that?
Yeah, he's not in it for that long, though, either, is he? But he's such a believable character, just coming in, like, kind of like gentle.
Is his old college mate or something, or roommate?
It's that he's been through. Is it a military thing with Blackadder?
No, in Blackadder the Second, his best man. He said, my old college mate or roommate or something. Like
school, maybe? I can't remember, actually.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So if Richie's number one base need that he wants to satiate the whole time is sex, is Eddie's alcohol? Because Eddie likes sex. We know he likes food from the fry up where he finished off the Taiwanese ranch style jumbo fish burgers, and from raiding Rottweiler's fridge. But with Eddie, I get the impression that if you offered him either sex or a bottle of scotch, he would probably go for the bottle of scotch.
Well, yeah, I mean, he talks to alcohol like it's a woman, doesn't he? That hi baby and all that. Like when he's like looking at is that at the top of the Ferris wheel?
He's eyeing it up like it's a page 3 or something. Yeah. No, that I'm confusing that with Bottom Live 1, where he does that with the woman.
He motorboats the newspaper on stage in Bottom Live 1, but when up the Ferris wheel, it's an advert for some alcohol.
Is up the Ferris wheel a euphemism?
Richie would definitely like to take someone up the Ferris wheel, wouldn't he? Yeah, but it's the desperation, isn't it, with them, that on both parts, like, so they're both in desperate need of a lot of their missing human needs, aren't they? They might have the food, like I suppose you never get the feeling that they're actually starving, do you, in Bottom?
No. Eddie's referred to as an alcoholic. If Eddie is an alcohol addict, is Richie a sex addict who's just never had sex?
I think so, yeah. He's absolutely obsessed with it, isn't he? And he can't ever fulfill his one desire.
He lose the obsession once you get it? Like, for example, if someone always wanted to go to Florida or whatever, to Disney World or whatever, then when you go on, you stop going on about it because you've done it.
Is that a euphemism?
First location I could think of for some reason, Florida and Disney World.
Once you do, it's always the anticipation of something that you're looking forward to, isn't it? Once you do the thing that you've been wanting to do, then you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, I've done that now. What's next, isn't it? So would Richie move on, or would he?
Eddie doesn't move on with the alcohol, though, does he? He's got his booze and still wants more.
Yeah, with an addiction, I suppose that would be it. But with Richie, I just don't. I think it's the idea of sex that he's in love with, of course, because he's never actually had it.
It's really, if we want to dig deep about the character, and which we should do, is what we're here talking about the sitcom, he wants love and acceptance because he's a very lonely person who's not had any love in his life ever. He's been abandoned by his family.
Yep.
He's not got any friends really, because his best friend in the world he hates, and his friend hates him too. He wants love and acceptance.
That's another basic need when you move up beyond the survival. And Richie's starved of all of it. He's sex starved. He's affection starved, isn't he? He's completely and utterly ostracised by any of the, quote unquote friends that are around him. They're all Eddie's friends, aren't they? They're not his.
Yeah, but he's getting abused daily as well, getting beaten and pretty borderline murdered.
I wanted to mention actually, obviously the violence in Bottom. Again with survival mode. Like if you are. Obviously, I don't think Rick and Aid sat down and thought, right, we're going to make them violent in order to keep them down. But it's another element of their existence, isn't it? That if they're constantly beating each other up and feeling like they're not safe in their own area, then how can you move forward in your life? They're literally just surviving at the bottom, aren't they? Like that's the base need of it all. And the base humour element of it, which is what I think it ties in with the slapstick and how people have always maybe dismissed Bottom because it is low humour, it is toilet humour, it's sophomoric humour, which is what I've now learnt is how I can I can take my empty biro pen and have a cigarette at parties now and say, well, of course, Bottom is sophomoric humour, and you might not understand it, but if you studied it like I have.
I always like the phrase scatological humour rather than toilet humour.
Because scat.
It basically means the same, but it makes you sound more wanky.
Yeah. Or shitty.
Yeah.
Scat is the sexual thing of pooing and eating it or something, isn't it? Or at least
I don't know through experience, but I believe it.
Hot lunch as well. I've heard.
Water sports.
Water sports is much less gross than poo and stuff for some reason. I don't know, just a bit of pee on you, but shit. Oh god.
Well, I was just half quoting Partridge, but yeah.
Remember when Richie and Eddie are watching the Prime Minister's nudie blackmail tape? They start off interested and quite quickly move through to revulsion at some of it, don't they? There's parts of it where they simply would not want that to happen to them, such as the moon rocket going in certain places.
Like they don't seem to understand it in a way that like teenage boys, adolescents wouldn't understand what's happening. Although obviously it's done for laughs, isn't it? And that again, that's the opposite of show, don't tell. Like they're not showing us, they're telling us, and it's painting that picture in our mind.
They couldn't show it because of BBC.
I think John Major was busy.
Having a curry. Yeah.
Hey.
The Richie that is portrayed in Guest House Paradiso does sort of slip into that world a bit easier when he finds Simon Pegg's saucy underwear, doesn't he?
Yeah, saucy underwear. I mean, they're so crass and it's not subtle, is it?
I mean, like the word saucy makes you think of Carry On, doesn't it? Oh, saucy.
Are they Simon Pegg's ones? Because
there is misses.
There must be misses because it's a bra and there's a top bit as well, so it must be that
it's meant to be the misses. I think. But he certainly slips into them. That it's perversion, isn't it? So it's going again. You've got your basic I want to have sex, and then it's pushing it to the very limit of what you can. But it's interesting that Richie and Eddie aren't always that depraved. Like they kind of play around with the idea of what they'd actually be into, don't they? Like would Richie be into being he'd be a submissive, wouldn't he? Like,
Richie definitely.
Would he dress up in leather and find all that really pervy? Like, I think he would, obviously from Guest House Parody, so absolutely he would.
As they increasingly make him the wife in the relationship and make him more, in inverted commas, gay, in the live shows, you even have him saying to Eddie, don't you, something like, oh, take me, Eddie, take me now.
Yeah, he's dreaming.
Yeah, he'd be the bottom.
Yeah, he would be the bottom. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so, base humour is very intellectual, I think.
Explain.
But isn't it interesting how we've obviously all grown up watching Bottom? The idea that you'd what you've obviously been shown and what you then find funny and what you recognise maybe in yourself and all of that. Like, do you think Bottom has influenced your sense of humour irrevocably?
Definitely.
100%.
Like, the knob gag. All of that, like that puerile element of it, isn't what I would sort of sit down and say, well, that's definitely my humour. But I absolutely do love all of that. Whereas I'm sure some people are, that's beneath me or whatever.
Yeah, but it's because it's a guilty pleasure, I guess. Like, I've seen fully grown men on the train with a copy of the Viz, suppressing hysterical laughter which is a wonderful feeling when you're not meant to be laughing.
I thought you said they were fucking the Viz mag for a minute.
No.
That would be a violent thing to see on the train. Yeah, I think there is a lot of snobbery around comedy, which I've probably been guilty of. I think everyone can be, because often we've talked about how it goes from through from tastes in comedy and physical comedy and what you enjoy watching, and wordplay is definitely something that I enjoy. So I think the knob gag is a brilliant mixture of the two, isn't it? If you can get a pun in about a brilliantly low bass knob gag, then there's nothing more wonderful than listening to Richie and Eddie thinking of different ways in which to get that laugh from you. And it's clever. I mean, it appeals to a broader sense of people. I don't know. I don't understand why there's so much snobbery in comedy, because it is the great leveler, is what you laugh at, isn't it, as human beings, and what you recognise and what you find shocking or hilarious. But it's interesting how it does change, like, as you grow older, maybe. Like, I don't know whether some people loved Bottom when they were younger. If they watched it now, they wouldn't find it as funny, or whether it is that you still love it because you remember that nostalgia of watching it.
I guess there's things like The New Statesman was always... was too grown up for me when I was younger. I love Rick Mao. I'll try watching that. I don't understand this at all. But
weirdly, it ages, doesn't it? Like, that kind of humour has aged a lot. So when you watch it now, it kind of just feels like, I don't really get some of the references. Whereas with Bottom, I feel like that it's so timeless. Like, we're going to be laughing at Bottom way into the future.
Maybe them keeping it about such basic levels of needs for the characters not simplified the plots, but it makes the stories and the situations quite universally understandable to people and appealing to audiences. So it doesn't overcomplicate things in a way that if you watch an episode of Friends and the jokes are about someone at work and their data processing isn't going right, you can kind of like, well, it's not really my world. But everyone understands the desire to get your end away. Everyone enjoys getting pissed, and everyone enjoys eating too much food
and watching vile people on screen.
Yeah,
just enjoying their ridiculous lives, isn't it? Like, you're not really seeing yourself in them, but you're finding it hilarious, because if you were in that situation, it would just be like ridiculously ludicrous.
For some reason, I can imagine myself being one of those two, but despite my life being very different, and if I was one of those two, fuck me, I've fucked up somewhere.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I saw literally this week someone write on a Bottom group. It was the lady who wrote it. She said something along the lines of, I worry that a lot of the guys in this group don't understand that when Rick wrote the character of Richie, he was taking the piss out of you. He wasn't applauding you, basically that. And she got she got called a lesbian, all that.
That showed her.
Lots of lovely quotes happened underneath. But I think that's exactly it, isn't it? Like, Richie and Eddie aren't meant to be applauded. They're flawed, and it's all part of the humour, but the basic human needs that they're desiring is what drives them forward. Do you remember that Sopranos episode, the D Girl, I think it is, where Christopher... Have you watched The Sopranos?
Oh, yep.
Have you not?
No, I've not. The Sopranos is number one on my list of things that I have to watch, because it's 7 series, so I need to carve out a decent amount of time for it.
Get it watched, because I have to hold my hands up and say I only watched it during the first lockdown.
Oh yeah.
But the episode D Girl, basically, no spoilers being given away here at all, but Christopher wants to be a playwright. He wants to write about the mob, all that kind of stuff, and he gets the script anyway. She's giving him a little bit of advice, and she talks about the basic human needs. If you're thinking about character, and she talks to, obviously whatever, and then they end up having sex. But it's that thing, you sit down, you want to write a really good character, think about what they need in life and what you're going to deny them.
Yeah.
And that will be what drives them forward. So I do think that Rick and Aid will have sat down and been like, well, what are we going to deny our characters? Because in the young ones, obviously I know Ben Elton and Rick and Lisa wrote that. But I do wonder what Aid maybe brought to, because I don't know, like, they hadn't written together before, had they? And I think, was it Paul Jackson was saying, no one really knew what to expect from them writing together.
That's very true, and I wonder if that's why Bottom is the more leaning towards Waiting for Godot-esque sort of stories. And that's why in the breakdown of what a lot of the stories are about, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of them can be summed up by just passing the time and then reacting to events often that they have caused and sometimes that they haven't caused. But 10 out of 18 episodes are about, we're just sort of just trying to get to the day and pass the time.
And it's often what falls in their lap that drives the story, isn't it? They haven't necessarily gone out to... So say when they steal the car and they steal the honeymoon, they haven't gone out to do that. He's going into that car to turn off the light, isn't he? In a very petulant...
turn on the light.
Petty way. Yeah, sorry, turn on the light in a very petulant way.
Or when
they find them. And then it's like, oh, brilliant, this is falling in our lap, let's go.
Or when they end up running a shop. The start of that episode is Eddie just wants to watch videos. Richie's sort of restless, wants to do something, wants someone to play with. And then the story propels Mr. Harrison in there, and they've got a shop to look after.
Yeah. And then Eddie steals all the food because that's what he would do, and the booze and everything. But Richie's like trying to be the power trip, but ultimately gets led astray by Eddie.
This is Richie trying to go to the next level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Absolutely, he's got a job, he's got a purpose in that episode, and Eddie doesn't want it.
Do you find it odd now? Because I guess it was early days for Eddie as a character. I think if that same plot had happened in series 3, Eddie would have been on the booze immediately, where he's just kind of doing his job properly at the beginning for a little bit before he then no, we'll go upstairs and
you're right, because in there he opens up some crisps, doesn't he? He
reads the paper,
but he does what he doesn't do is like pull down a 6-pack and start cracking through them. And you're right, series 3 Eddie would have probably done that and then joined in with the rioters rather than fought them off.
That's true.
that would actually be quite funny with the riot happening and then just cut to like Richie, oh no, what are we going to do, Eddie? And then Eddie not being there, and then Eddie on the other side of the riot.
Come on, everyone, I've got the booze,
Well, it is I've already rated it earlier, isn't it, about the off license and everything. Like Eddie's already been
the
out
last one,
right,
in Carnival.
Yeah.
It's like they're too young to know, aren't they? Like absolutely, brilliant characterization. I think is all you can sum it up as, isn't it? They've sat down and thought through how those characters react in any situation.
And there's not many other characters in sitcom, be it American ones or British ones I can think of, that are as driven by their base needs as Richie and Eddie. I know there are people like the Steptoes, and we've mentioned other instances of ones where sometimes it happens, but there's no other characters really where those are their primary driving forces.
In sitcom, no. The thing that jumps to mind is American Pie. It's the whole plot about getting laid.
Yeah, but again, they're adolescents, aren't they? So it's
between
that
them a little bit.
If you and they're teenagers. So once you've got above a certain amount of your survival needs, you should then, as a human, be looking to move upwards in your social self-esteem and what you're achieving in your work and all of those things, which is what a lot of other sitcoms are about, where your position is in life. And am I going to get a better job? Am I going to, have a wonderful marriage? Are my children doing okay? There's all those other worries that come in. Am I doing right for the environment in the good life? All of those kind of things. They're very high needs, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing in Father Ted is that they're not spiritual in any way, are they? But they're priests,
Yeah.
It's like, well, how are you going to use those needs? Because weirdly, they don't seem to be bothered about the fact they don't have sex, do they? There is the one where he's got a crush on, is Derbla Kerwin, is it? Who comes in.
Yeah.
And Father Ted very much is like a schoolboy in her presence, isn't he?
Father Jack is the representation of the desire and the pursuit of base needs in that program.
Yeah.
Father Jack is like Richie and Eddie mashed together into one.
Yeah, and in a very, very grotesque amalgamation, because he just looks so vile, doesn't he, Father Jack, at any given time? But when he goes back in his flashbacks, he wasn't that grim, was he? He's still grim.
Yeah, what when he's teaching netball or something? Yeah.
And Dougal doesn't have anything beyond.
It's like a child,
very childlike desires, isn't it? Yeah.
Another character I'd like to bring up, not bottom related, Arnold Rimmer.
Yeah. I
find it is a really good choice that they could have easily had him be a virgin, and that would have been believable. I think it's better that it's how many times have I had sex? Once.
Yeah.
Once, and it lasted 12 minutes, which includes the time it takes to eat a pizza.
Yeah.
Okay, and since then you've never had it again, and that was about 15 years ago or something. Okay.
So to achieve it and then never get it again,
so
is that actually worse?
Missing. He does have sex as a hologram, doesn't he? With that other hologram.
Yeah.
And you make love like a Japanese meal. I heard when I was younger a Japanese mule. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean?
Right.
Wow, I've always loved that, so many portions. That's brilliantly played by, what's her name?
Jane Horrocks,
yeah. You make love like a Japanese meal.
Yeah. What is it?
Small portions, but so many courses.
Yeah, so he's gone 12 times at a minute at a time or something.
Yeah, I think you can get it back quick. Brilliant. But I love that entire episode because it is just you must have thought I was terribly rude. All I said was Geronimo. Yeah. But that's him climbing the social ladder. That's his one, isn't it? He wants to climb the ladder and he never will. He's at the bottom.
He's not at the bottom. He's 0.1.
He's second
above.
technician.
He's one rung above. The bottom is Lister, and he's only above that.
Barely, barely, and lords it so smugly, like a bus driver, that sort of thing. A little bit of power.
Yeah.
A bus driver who can see you running for the bus and doesn't care.
But Rimmer's another learned fool, isn't he? You know, the idea that he's got all those books in Marooned and everything, and then it's like, oh yeah, well, have you ever read any of it about Shakespeare? And he's like, well, I've seen West Side Story. That's based on one of them.
Although,
and, you know, but he'll talk about it as if he knows what's what.
I think Rimmer knows that he's not capable of doing the things that he wants to be.
Deep down, yeah, I think he does know. Yeah,
he wants to be. What is the job title?
An officer. Navigation officer.
Navigation officer. But the reason he spent 12 weeks doing the revision timetable is because he knew that if he'd spent 12 weeks actually revising, he'd still fail it, and then he wouldn't have an excuse.
Yeah. He takes learning drugs to try and memorise it, and then just learns the conversation.
Yeah. He knows he's painfully inadequate, but he has to keep up the bravado, doesn't he? I love that as well with the... Well, we ended up talking smeg rather than talking bottom, but yeah, when it's like, if I'd eaten roast beef 15 times in my life, you wouldn't say I'd constantly ate roast beef, because he constantly fails the navigation.
Yeah.
He's got to believe his own bullshit, hasn't he? And Richie believes his own bullshit. He's convinced that if he meets the right girl, she will go out with him, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'd look great with a girlfriend and all that. And like, I don't think he ever really thinks that he's to blame.
But is it the right? Yeah, is he after the right girl or any girl? Because he does try it with everyone. I guess law of averages. He doesn't really have a type. It's someone with a pulse, isn't it?
Yeah, stick a wig on a speak your weight machine, and he'd have been happy.
Yeah.
But then I don't know whether he'd try it on with, say, Mrs. Potato. Or would she just not go near him?
I'll take the practical if it's all the same to you. He does.
That's right. And she's like, no, thanks, isn't she? Yeah.
Even a raggedy old prostitute turns down Richie. The final insult.
I think it's because that he's never got any money. It's why he's never just gone to a prostitute, because that's something he talks about when having a load of money. Oh, I'm going to employ a prostitute.
That's in one of the live shows, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm finally my wildest dream come true. Yeah. My wildest dream.
And that's it. Yeah, if only he did have the money, he could achieve it. But I think ultimately he does want to meet somebody who wants to have sex with him, doesn't he, Richie?
I don't think he really would care that much about what she's feeling. It's just kind of like an expensive masturbation session that he'd just have. He'd
think
be
he's
happy.
Quite a romantic at heart, though. I think he wants to meet someone.
In a
sort of overanalyzing it.
Sort of, yeah. There's something.
He wants to meet a girl that wants to be with him. I think he'd want
a wife more than just a one-night stand.
Yeah.
But a wife meaning a servant that has sex with him.
Yeah. But no, they're trying to trick women into having sex with them, so I am talking bollocks. I think it's just that he wants to have sex with anyone by any means, like the pheromone sex spray and everything like that. It's not about romance, is it?
Yeah, it's about the shortcut, isn't it? It's tricking someone, drugging someone, whatever.
And ending up with no knob from overuse.
What's that one from?
Mind you, what else is? I'll end up with no knob from it. They'll just be doing it to you and doing it. That is from Smells.
I think I'll put on half a bottle as well. Yeah. Thanks to everyone who's pledged so far. But if you want to get a copy for a friend or a relative or indeed anybody you know, you can head to unbound.com and search Talking Bottom. Still available, isn't it? Even though we're funded.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this episode before the funding for the book closes, then you can still get yours or your mate's name in the book as well, in the supporters.
And there's also a various amount of merchandise. Wonderful things like t-shirts. No, not t-shirts. Mugs. We have got mugs. Tea towels.
I think we've got a t-shirt, haven't we?
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
A t-shirt and a tea towel.
There's a t-shirt.
Pub crawl. That's the gem, I think. The pub crawl where you get to meet a bunch of other wankers who really like bottom, including us three. Can you imagine meeting us three? Wow. You can't. Yeah. Get in on this opportunity.
Can you just say the word fans?
Fans.
Okay, cool. Now later on we can cut the word fans in instead of wankers, just so we don't alienate everyone. Okay.
Well, I think they.
Okay.
Come on. It's like
they're insulting the entire bottom fan base.
Like calling them bastards at the end of the crowdfunding. They're like, I'm outraged. I can't believe they say this. Like, drop their monocle falls off. Oh my God.
There have been people who complain about the swearing on our podcast, though, haven't there?
What?
Yeah. No. Like too much swearing. Yeah, that was one of our reviews. Yeah.
What? Absolutely.
I know.
Yeah.
There are prudes out there. But yeah, you can come and have a drink with us. I won't talk to you, but I'm sure Matt will.
In Incel Corner.
No, we'd love to meet you all. Come join us. Come back to our place because we're going to have it all. Yeah. Check it out. And what else can they do if they want to talk to us? They can email us.
They can email us at 11mafekkingparade@gmail.com and let us know what you think we should be talking about in these episodes that we've already recorded on social media at Talking Bottom. That's Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.
Thanks very much for listening.
See you next time.
Bye.